Not every conversation needs to be loud. Not every disagreement needs to become hostile. And not every man is interested in spectacle. The Society of Ordinary Gentlemen exists for those who believe that courtesy still matters, that restraint is a strength, and that how one conducts himself, especially when it is inconvenient, is a measure of character. This is not a platform for self-promotion. It is a place for thoughtful discussion, mutual respect, and personal accountability. The Society of Ordinary Gentlemen is an online community with the mission of cultivating modern gentlemen by teaching skills, habits, and mindsets that elevate personal style, communication, health, and lifestyle through community, courses, and mentorship. Membership is open to adults willing to uphold these standards.
Welcome to another episode of the Gentleman's Forum. My name is Anthony Bunton, and I am the host of the Gentleman's Forum and also the managing director for the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. And this podcast is sponsored by the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen and also by Carolina Best. If you are looking for a fragrance, whether it's men or a lady, if you want bath products, I'm telling you, Carolina Best has the best deals. They have over 400 fragrances, some of the most popular fragrances at prices that are unreal. They are the best. They are mostly oils, so they last a long time. If not sure if they have what you're looking for, you can message them. You can go online, www.carolinabest.com. You can leave a message and ask them if they carry that, and if they have it, they'll let you know. I'm telling you, Carolina Best has the best fragrances, and they have shower products, roll-ons. You need to go check them out. I wholeheartedly recommend them. Even some of our members of the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, they all use them. So again, Carolina Best, if you're looking for fragrances, whether you're men or ladies, get with them. They have it, and you won't be disappointed. So today we are continuing our series on the gentleman art of speech, and today we want to get into a little bit about how to handle arguments like a gentleman. And this is very important. As I stated before, it has been said that 80 to 90% of the men that are incarcerated today are incarcerated over words that were spoken. And a lot of these have to do with arguments and things like this. We've seen an increase in divorces and family disputes and stuff. And all this has to do with dealing with communication, how we talk to people and stuff. And today we're going to dive into this. While we're diving into this, I'm also want to expound a little bit on the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, because it is a great society for gentlemen. And that's one thing that we really get into, is to how to handle things like a gentleman. Communication is one of the biggest things. We're also in the process of adding a junior society of ordinary gentlemen, which is going to be geared towards young men ages 14 to 18 to groom them into being gentlemen. So when they do become an adult, they have the skills, they have the foundation of being a gentleman. One thing that a lot of you have been monitoring this, and we've seen it on the news, the Carmelo Anthony case where the young man, I think 17 years old, in high school, had been convicted of a crime of killing another boy at a track meet. And this is why communication is important. This is why having the structure for young men is so important. This is why the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen are in the process of creating a junior society, so we can help avoid these things. We can help curtail these things, and teaching young men how to settle differences, how to handle situations. So we're going to dive into this of how to handle arguments like a gentleman. And I want to start by saying that handling arguments as a gentleman means focusing on respect, clarity, mutual understanding, rather than worried about winning at all costs. The goal is to preserve the relationship while making your voice heard. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to get into this because, like I stated before, So many relationships, so many people, lives have been ruined over words and how words are said and how things come across. And so we're going to get into that. And I want to start by saying that when you have a disagreement with somebody and you want to rectify this situation, you want to get into a dialogue of that person. y- First thing you want to do is you want to choose the right setting of when you're going to talk to this person. As we talked in the last session, so many people are using text messaging and emails to deal with situations. And they do this because they want to avoid a face to face confrontation. Now, the problem I have with this is, and a lot of people say, well, I don't want to talk to this person face to face because I'm going to say something I shouldn't say. And actually, the reality is, it's really just the opposite. When you use text message or email, I believe it's worse because this is where people hide behind that cloak of a text message or the email where they can say things that they normally wouldn't say in front of this person. They'll say rude things, hurtful things. They will say things that they normally would not say to that person face to face. I believe that it's so much better to have a one-on-one dialogue, one-on-one conversation with somebody. I just recently had this discussion with my daughter, and she's a grown woman. She has a family and kids, and it was over a situation that we have dealt with before, and it came down to a miscommunication of an email. And I've always told her, and I've told my son, that this is why I do not like communicating via email or text message. I prefer a one-on-one conversation. So you want to choose the right setting. You want to avoid heated debates in a noisy public area, especially because you don't want, number one, you don't want to put this other person that you're dealing with on the spot. You don't want everybody knowing your business. So you want to find a quiet, comfortable place, like maybe a coffee shop or maybe a walk in the park, a quiet setting at home. This helps reduce the being defensive. It encourages an open dialogue. So you want to find the right place. You do not want to just walk up to somebody and confront them in front of other people, because when you do that, you are setting yourself up for a harsh conversation, or you're setting yourself up into a possible physical altercation. Because when you put somebody on the spot in front of everybody else, there, and we all know that people, what they want to say is save face because they don't want to be called out in front of people. They don't want to be put down in front of people. So when you put somebody in that situation, you are escalating that whole conversation to where it's going to get into a very negative and possibly a volatile situation. So first thing you want to do is you want to get the right setting. And then also, if you're the one that's initiating this conversation, listen first. And when I mean listen, I don't mean let that person start talking and then you start interrupting. And we talked about this in the last podcast, that the minute somebody starts talking, we as humans have a mechanism to where we automatically start forming a defense or forming a reaction to what's being said. And we don't, at that point, we completely cut everything else off. We're not listening to anything else that person has to say afterwards. We heard those first couple of sentences, that first paragraph, if you will, and now we've already started forming a defense or a response or a reaction, as it was, towards what we just heard, and we done cut off everything else. So what I'm saying is, if you're the one that is wanting to speak to this person to resolve an issue, you're making that first step. So if you're going to do that, then take the initiative and listen first. Listen, let the other person finish speaking, let without interruption. When they're talking, show interest, nod that you're listening to them. Don't just sit there like this and show no expression, no movement or anything. You want to let them know that you're interested in what they're saying, that you're receiving their points clearly. You want to be an active listener, and you want, because when you do that, you want to build the trust, and you want to show that you value their perspective on what they're saying. And yes, you might not agree with what they're saying, but you want to let them know that you value what they're saying. You value the dialogue that they're talking about. So again, when you're inviting somebody to resolve an issue, let them speak first fully. Don't start interrupting. You want to listen to what they have to say. You want to be an active listener. You want to acknowledge that they're speaking, a head nod, or maybe say, "I understand what you're saying." You want to show that you are being an active listener. You want to build their trust. You want to show that you value what they have to say. And then the next thing you want to do is find a common ground. Acknowledge points that you two agree on. Just because you two have a difference in agreement doesn't mean that the whole thing is completely wrong. They might have a couple points that you agree with. You might have a couple points that they agree with. So you want to find a common ground. You want to acknowledge the points of agreement, even if they're small. And you want to use phrases like, "I agree with you on this part," or "this part is important to the both of us." You can easily ease the tension and open up the door to the communication when you can acknowledge and you can come to some common ground. Because I guarantee you, 90 to 95% of a conversation or a disagreement that two people have, there are some common grounds within that, whatever the situation is. There is some common ground. So if you take the time and you look for those common grounds, guess what? You have something to build on. You can build on those common grounds, and you're opening up that dialogue, because now this person sees that you understand where they're coming from. And like I said, whether it's small, whether it's great, there are going to be some common ground in that discussion that you both can understand and you can accept and you can get along with. And then the other thing is, uh, when you start talking and you start giving your side, or you want to communicate your perspective on something, you want to use I statements. And in other words, you want to take ownership. You want to say things, instead of saying you want to use terms like I. Instead of blaming somebody, um, you want to say, "I feel it is important to me." You want to reduce the person being defensive, and you want to keep focus on your feelings and the needs that you have concerning this communication. So you want to use the words like "I," or "I feel," or "I need this," instead of saying, "You're doing this and you're doing that," or "You're not doing this," or "You make me feel." Use the I concept. "I feel this way. I understand. I am at this point." So by taking that ownership, but you're still at the same time, you're expressing how you feel. You're expressing your part of the communication, but you're not pointing the finger at somebody. So you want to use the I statement, and then at the same time, when you're talking to somebody, control your body language. Body language is very essential in communicating with somebody, because if you're sitting there with your arms folded, you come across as being closed-minded, that you've already made your decision, you've already have your opinion on something, or, at the same time, you don't want to sit there and start looking around and playing with your phone. And then I'm telling you something, gentlemen, this is one thing that irritates me more than anything. And I see it happen a lot of times. Is if you're having a conversation with somebody, put your cell phone down, put it on silent, put it away, have a conversation. There is nothing more disrespectful. There is nothing more aggravating than when you're trying to talk to somebody and that person is sitting there looking at their phone, because you're going to feel like what you're saying is not important to them. And so if you feel that way, imagine how that person feels the same way. So if you're going to sit down, you're going to have a dialogue with somebody, and you want to resolve a situation, both sides need to put their phones down and be active, be present in that communication. So you want to make sure that you're not folding your arm. You want to make sure you're not looking around, and you definitely want to make sure that you're not looking at your phone, sending a text, or looking at something. That is not going to help the situation. That is only going to enhance the argument. It's going to enhance the hostility, because you are going to come across as you do not care what that person has to say. So you want to control your body language. You want to be present. And then at the same time, you want to reframe the conversation. You want to use the other person's values or concerns. You want to strengthen your argument. I'm telling you, when you do so, research shows that using their perspective is more persuasive than attacking their position. And I'm going to say that again. Using their perspective is more persuasive than attacking their position. And what I mean by that is, when you use their perspective, in other words, you say, okay, I understand what you're saying about this, and I see where you might look at it this way. I see where you're coming from and how you're feeling about this. You are giving credit to their feelings. You are letting them know, hey, I understand why you feel this way. I understand how you came to this conclusion, instead of dismissing or attacking their position on what they have to say. The minute you start this, no, that's wrong. No, you shouldn't feel this way. No, no, you're not going to do this. You become the aggressor, and you are devaluing how they feel. And one thing you cannot do, and I see this happen so many times, you cannot tell somebody how they feel. You cannot tell somebody that they shouldn't feel this way, or they shouldn't look at something this way, because you do not have that authority. You do not control that other person. So you don't want to devalue somebody's perspective on something. What you want to do is you want to reframe the conversation. You want to acknowledge that you can see their perspective. You want to show that you are understanding of how they saw it or how they feel. Not saying you're agreeing with them. What you're doing is you're letting them know that, hey, I understand how you came to this conclusion, or I understand why you might feel this way. Okay. You're not giving up your point. You're not devaluating that person. But what you're doing is you are reframing the conversation in a positive manner. Okay. And then the other thing is, and this is very important, and it is so detrimental in communication, remain calm. I don't care how that person is coming across. One of you has to remain calm. And as a gentleman, we pride ourselves on being calm in situations. And the worst thing you can do, I see this happen all the time, is when you become loud and boisterous and getting your point across. You are not going to make that person agree with you by yelling at them. You are not going to make that person see your side by being boisterous, having hand gestures and flaring and using profanity and stuff. You're not going to make that person see your side any better doing this. The only thing you're doing is you are proving that that person cannot talk to you. So what you want to do is you want to remain calm. Let them speak. Tell them that you see certain common ground the two of you have. Let them know that you understand how they feel, or you can see where they got that understanding, or where they got that thought process from. You're not diminishing them. And the whole time you are remaining calm. And when you remain calm, that keeps them from taking it to another level. Because, gentlemen, if you're here and then that person's here, and then you're going to take it here, then that person's going to take it here, and it just continues to escalate. This is how things end up in a volatile situation. This is how people end up being in a situation where somebody is hurt physically or mentally, because they've allowed themselves to get out of character, and they've allowed themselves to escalate a situation. So you want to remain calm, and you also want to be willing to adjust. If the original argument isn't working, you want to be ready to change your tactics on how you're coming across. Maybe take it down another level. Um, come at it from a different perspective, because there are going to be times when you're not going to get your point across the way you think that person will receive it. So you have to be willing to change tactics. You have to be willing to say, okay, how can I get my point across, or how can I let this person see it from my point of view from a different angle? Okay. But if you're going to be headstrong saying that my way is the only way, what I say goes, I'm telling you, gentlemen, that's a situation that is not going to get rectified. So you want to be able to change tactics and come up with a different solution rather than insist on being rigid in your stance on whatever the point you're trying to make. Now, after you've got all this done and they've said their side and you've said your side, the best thing you can do next is end on a positive note. You want to summarize the key points and agree on the next steps. You want to reinforce cooperation. This leaves the door open for future conversations. So you want to end it on a positive note. You don't want to end it on this person's feeling demeaned, or this person feeling that they've lost, or their opinion doesn't matter. And you don't want to end this conversation you feel in the same way. Try to come with a common ground. Try to come with an agreement. As I stated in the beginning, sometimes we can agree to disagree on situations. That's one thing I like about the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, is that we get into some deep, intense conversations, and you're not always going to see somebody's way. You're not always going to agree with somebody, and it is okay to disagree. And you want to find a common ground. You want to end on a positive note. So in short, as a gentleman, we want to handle arguments with calmness, with respect, and focus on a mutual understanding. By listening and reframing and keeping the conversation on an even keel, you can resolve 90 to 95% of the problem. You can come to an understanding. And yes, there are going to be times when you're not. But I'm telling you, if we don't come to a understanding of how we communicate with people, how we deal with situations, then we put ourselves in a situation that is going to end up bad. You're going to break relationships, or it's going to become into a volatile situation that might end up in a physical altercation. So many people are getting arrested and losing jobs and losing relationships, and it's all focused on words, how we come across. And we talked about this in the last podcast about our communication skills, about avoiding using slang terms, avoiding text messaging and emails. Get into a realm of one-on-one. When we are engaged in a conversation with somebody and we are talking one-on-one, face to face, number one, the things that we would have said in the email or text is going to be far less than when you do it face to face with somebody. At the same time, you are able to see that person's expression. They can see your expressions. They can feel how you're coming across. You can feel how they're coming across. So communication in person is always going to be the best avenue. And if you use these points that we brought out today, dealing with communication, dealing with disagreements and arguments, I promise you that you're going to see less loss in relationships, less loss in friendships than if you continue doing the way most of us do, and that is to blow a gasket, to go off on somebody, say inappropriate things, send a hateful text message or email, because the mere fact that you're talking to this person, I'm talking about normal relationship, I'm not talking about a stranger. The mere fact that you're talking to this person says that you've already had a relationship with them in the beginning, whether it's best friends, co-workers, marriage, dating, whatever the case may be. You've already established that foundation. You've already have a foundation relationship with that person. So why sit there and blow it and getting hooked in our feelings over words when we can effectively communicate and resolve situations? And this is what we want to do. It took me, when I started this journey as a gentleman and I got into the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen and started listening to other men and hearing how they resolve situations, hearing how they handle things. And we all are going to deal with these things, whether it's at work, whether it's in a marital relationship or dating relationship, whether it's with a coworker or just a friend in general. I learned so much from being in the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen on how to handle situations, how to deal with issues that could become a volatile thing, and was able to de-escalate and bring things down. And as the ultimate end goal is, you want to de-escalate. You want to use what some people call verbal judo of resolving situations before they get out of control. And I'm telling you, I learned so much from Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. It has really helped me in my journey in being a gentleman. And I encourage you that if you want to learn more about these things, you want to go to the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. They have a website, www.beagentleman.org, or you can go to the internet and type in school, SKOOL, and it'll bring you up to a separate website. And in the search box, type in Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, and you can find them. You can go in there. They're going to ask you a couple questions because what they want to do is, the society is private. Not saying that you can't get in or it costs money. It's private because they want real men that want to live as gentlemen. They're trying to avoid the scammers, the bots, the people that are just getting on for personal things to promote businesses. So they're going to ask you a couple questions to verify who you are. And then I promise you, when you get in there and you get to meeting other gentlemen, and they got men from all over the world, Australia, Japan, Egypt, India, in the United States. They get together and they have such a wealth. Now, it's not just about style and fashion. I mean, they get into fragrances, they get into all kind of things. And this is what you want to do. You want to get in there, start networking and growing and learning. I'm telling you, I did it, and it was one of the best moves in my journey as a gentleman to do this. And I encourage you to do the same. I encourage you to find them on the internet, www.beagentleman.com, or you can go to school, SKOOL, search for Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, just like this podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Society of Ordinary Gentlemen. We are streaming on major platforms. We are on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, type in the Society of Ordinary Gentlemen, or you can go to my personal page of The Modern Gentleman. We're on Deezer. All these things that we have putting on these podcasts to help men be gentlemen, to help men learn how to live as gentlemen, so we can avoid things like this Carmelo Anthony young man life being wasted. Gentlemen, listen, there are so many men out here that grew up in single homes, and that's not discrediting any lady or any man. But what I'm saying is, there are so many men that grew up that didn't have a solid foundation on what it takes to be a gentleman. And so we have an opportunity as men to join a society like Ordinary Gentlemen and to help learn how to be gentlemen. We have an opportunity to build the junior society so we can take young men and groom them into being gentlemen, so they don't end up on this path of facing a trial and a life in prison because nobody had the gumption or took the time to help them become gentlemen. And I want to correct this. I want us to be a society of gentlemen. I want to bring back the nostalgic of being a gentleman. There's so many men nowadays that have gotten away from being gentlemen or were never shown how to be a gentleman. And we have the greatest opportunity to do this. And so we're going to continue these podcasts on the art of speech of a gentleman. We're going to get more into how to be a gentleman. And I encourage you, stay with us. Get on these podcasts and listen to them. Go to society. When you get there, whether it's on the website or on school, on the website at the top, it says join now if you go to school. But when you get there, let them know that you have got this information from the Gentleman's Forum, and get on there, listen, get involved, be active. I'm telling you, it is the best thing to help you on your journey as a gentleman. I encourage you, I challenge you today to let's start communicating better. Let's start being gentlemen and handling our situation and avoiding confrontational arguments that are going to end up in breaking relationships or end up in something worse. And I challenge you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. I thank you for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Gentleman's Forum. You guys have a great day and be blessed.